Hello everyone. In this video, we will understand the difference between movement along the supply curve and a shift in supply. Let us first understand movement along the supply curve using a graph and equations. In this graph, on the vertical axis, we have the price of pizza, and on the horizontal axis, we have the quantity of pizza. We draw a supply curve and mark a point on it. This point shows that when the price is 10, quantity supplied is 5. Now let us reduce the price and move to a new price level. As the price changes, the point moves along the same supply curve and the quantity supplied also changes. Notice that the point does not leave the curve. It simply moves from one point to another point on the same curve. This is called movement along the supply curve. In simple terms, when the price changes, quantity supplied changes, and the point moves along the same supply curve. Since the supply curve represents the relationship between price and quantity supplied, a change in quantity supplied caused by the change in price is known as movement along the supply curve. Now let us understand this concept through a supply equation. This is our inverse supply equation. P is equal to 0 plus 2Qs. We can also use the direct supply equation. Qs is equal to 0 plus 0.5p. However, in standard mathematics, we usually plot the dependent variable on the y-axis and the independent variable on the x-axis. In the case of the direct supply equation, if we plot quantity supplied on the y-axis and the price on the x-axis, it becomes slightly confusing for analysis. For this reason, we will use the inverse supply equation so that the price remains on the y-axis and quantity supplied remains on the x-axis. Now suppose the price is 10. After substituting this value into the equation and solving it, we get a quantity supplied of 5. This price and quantity combination represents the current point on the supply curve. Next, let us increase the price from 10 to 20. As the price changes, the quantity supplied increases from 5 to 10. At the same time, the point on the graph moves along the supply curve towards a new combination of price 20 and quantity supplied 10. As we continue changing the price in the same equation, the quantity supplied also changes accordingly. Simultaneously, the point continues to move along the same supply curve. Notice that only the value of price changes, while the supply equation itself remains unchanged. Therefore, the point stays on the same curve because the supply equation represents the relationship between price and quantity supplied. So far we have studied what happens when the price of a good changes. Now we will study what happens when factors other than price change. This is known as shift in supply. Factors other than price include the cost of production, technology, and the number of sellers in the market. When these factors change, supply may either increase or decrease. For example, if the number of sellers in the market increases, the supply of pizza will also increase. Similarly, when technology improves, efficiency increases, and as a result, the supply of pizza increases. Now let us understand this with the help of a graph. Suppose a point on the initial supply curve shows that at a price of 18, the quantity supplied is 9 units. If the number of sellers in the market increases, the entire supply curve shifts to the right. At the same price of 18, the quantity supplied increases from 9 units to 11 units. Notice that the price remains unchanged at 18, but supply increases. This is called an increase in supply. The original supply equation also changes to P is equal to minus 4 plus 2Qs because we now have a completely new supply curve with a new intercept. Initially, the intercept was 0, but after the increase in supply, the intercept changes to minus 4. So a shift in supply does not change the price within the same equation. Instead, it generates a new supply equation with a different intercept value. If we substitute the same price 18 into the new equation with a new intercept of minus 4 and solve it for Qs, the quantity supplied becomes 11 units. This shows that producers are now supplying more pizza at the same price of 18. Every point on the new supply curve represents a higher quantity supplied than before. Therefore, this is called a shift in supply, not movement along the curve. Now let us consider the opposite situation. If the number of sellers decreases, the supply of pizza will also decrease. As a result, the supply curve shifts to the left. At the same price of 18, producers now supply only 7 units instead of 9. The supply equation changes again to P is equal to 4 plus 2QS and the intercept changes from 0 to 4. When we substitute the same price 18 into the equation with the new intercept of 4, the quantity supplied becomes 7 units. This shows that producers are now supplying fewer units at the same price. This situation is called a decrease in supply. In conclusion, movement along the supply curve and a shift in supply are two different concepts in economics. Movement along the supply curve occurs when the price of a good changes, causing a change in quantity supplied, while the supply curve and supply equation remain the same. In contrast, a shift in supply occurs when factors other than price, such as cost of production, technology, or the number of sellers in the market, change. This creates an entirely new supply curve and a new supply equation with a different intercept.